All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, this is relationships continued, and we've got Matt with two beautiful females, Tylin, the queen of Ibudar, and we got Tuon, the empress of his match. What do they call it?
Oh, geez, the Sanchin, the what was the throne? They had a name for the throne. I'm just brain
The
farting
ever
on it.
victorious army, all of that.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the word that I was trying to come to. But yeah, the Tuon, who he ultimately ends up with in the end. And then if we have time, Swan and Brine, because they have their own interesting dynamic. And those are like combined with our Perrin and Fail and our three ladies with Rand before, and then Matt and these. Those are the most interesting ones. Leave in the comments if you want any other relationships broken down. We can do it successfully or not. I don't know, but we can do it.
Well, Matt's an interesting one. Um, because of um his character growth. Kind of I hadn't really thought about this before, but remember uh there's a contrast between the way male and female channelers grow.
Mm-hmm.
That women, you can sense their end point, you can sense their potential, and they grow in strength pretty much on a linear path. Men, you don't know once they've started, you can't sense it until they've reached their full potential, and they grow in leaps and bounds.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how Matt's character growth is because of what happens to him and the way he's forced to react to circumstances. Um, I mean, for instance, as we've talked about, we don't. One of the reasons I like the Matt chapters in The Dragon Reborn so much, that's really the first time we get to actually see Matt,
Mm-hmm.
because we see him very briefly, and then they get to Shadow Logoth, and now that's not all Matt anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and he's under the influence of the dagger. And even in the Great Hunt, where he's been protected from the influence of the dagger, um, because of what Moraine did in the Eye of the World, uh, he's you still have to wonder how much of this is him and how much of this is the dagger.
Well, and so this is where, especially the first relationship we're going to talk about comes in, is we've talked about before. Matt probably is highest in personality traits in openness and agreeableness. People think about his grumbling to say, oh, he's not agreeable. No, he's agreeable. He grumbles, but he does it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's the trait of agreeableness, but he's also ultimately loyal as well. He's very loyal, and that's what the Matt we got in book 3, going after the girls to help them, because he was loyal to his friends. And but openness, every personality trait has a good and bad. Openness, the bad of it is curiosity kills the cat. That's what happened to him in Shadow Logoth,
Mm-hmm.
because he was just like, ooh, shiny new thing. I wonder what it's like. Oh, she's just being overcautious. You talk yourself into that. And he was the curious cat that almost got killed. Uh, but as far as when we fast forward, so we have his relationship with Egwene, basically, Elaine and well, Egwene and Nynaeve, and Elaine was kind of a piggyback on that relationship when he went after them. And he goes on his adventures, and he ends up in Ibudar. It was very well written because he was scared of what Tylin was doing the whole time, but he never said no. And actually, we get little bits of, I'm slightly intrigued by this. And oh, we talked about pulling knives at the end of the last episode. Remember, Tylin pulled the knife on him too.
Mm-hmm.
She had the marriage knife, and he should have brought out
You
some
know,
bread and turkey and
I
mayo. But
um I don't remember if we talked about this at the time. We're old and forgetful, so I don't know, Scott or Isomorphic, if you're out there and you remember. Um, I remember we did talk about that of, did Tylan rape Matt? Well, Sexual harassment, maybe even into sexual assault,
By
but
modern standards, yes.
but even
Okay, a knife pulled out probably by even old school standards.
but it's Matt.
Hmm.
We talked at the time. If he really wanted to, I don't
He could have
care.
taken it from her. Yeah.
Yeah,
He has the
it's
quickest hands
Matt.
in the books.
This is the guy that killed Couladin.
Hmm.
Okay, he could handle it. This is a
This is the
guy.
guy that went toe to toe with a golem.
This is the guy that went toe to toe with a dozen evil Aiel when when Samael or somebody sent him into his camp. Remember
Hmm.
that scene as well. And but what I don't remember if we discussed at the time
Well, and
was
on the downside of the love chapters we're doing, he survived an assassination attempt from a woman he was falling in love with.
that's where I was headed to.
Oh, well, I didn't mean to jump your gun there, but
I don't remember if we so that is the point in the I don't remember if we brought it up at the time of look what he did to Melindra when she ambushed him. Tylin ambushed him and pulled a knife. Melindra ambushed him and pulled out spears and a dagger, and he fought her off and killed her. So if he really wanted to, he could have stopped Tylin. But psychologically, could he? Because of what happened to Melindra.
that might have played into it, but also I think we had enough nuggets to say that he was into it. Just
Exactly.
yeah, what he was running from wasn't relations with her. What he was running from was exclusive relations with her.
And as he says at the end of Crown of Swords, when he thinks he's leaving, is next time I do the chasing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or he even says that after their first time together is I'm supposed to do the no, what's going on here. And RJ and Harriet have both, made comments on that is the whole point of it is that it is an inversion.
Mm-hmm.
That is what makes it interesting as well as to some slightly humorous is because you would be aghast if the roles were reversed as well you
Well,
should be.
and actually, we get a very somber note at the end because of the way he leaves her. It was a metaphorical reversal of the role. He ties her up, and it ends up being her end. And he's looking back on this. When he looks back on the relationship, you get a little more insight than during it, because there is a little bit of RJ just trying to make you laugh with that real humor. Sanderson, that was real humor. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it was subtle. It was funny, but it wasn't in your face. Okay, but then when we have him reflecting on it, he was intrigued by that relationship dynamic. And so his personality type played into it. It was never one that was meant to last forever. It never was. Even Tylin admits to that.
Mm-hmm.
But relationships aren't always meant to last forever. Sometimes you have to have that fling in your life, maybe for a year, year and a half, where all of the fireball, the fireworks are going, and all of the right chemicals are going, and it's something new and expressive, and you learn something about yourself. He learned something about himself there, which he needed for Tuon, by the way. He needed that for his next relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And if you never have those learn about yourself relationships when you're young, then you'll never be the right partner for the person you really want to settle down with. Sometimes that accidentally happens at the same time, but you really need a stroke of lightning for that accidentally to happen the first time, which is why this is why I wanted to talk about this one. Go back to one of the sexy times with Sam. I should have looked up the episode, but I didn't know we were going to be talking in this direction until this moment. Remember, I said every young guy should date a cougar?
I do remember you saying that a while back. Yeah.
First of all, you increase your success rate because just being younger gives you bonus points. You could be a 5, now you're a 7 just because you're younger. Okay. So there's that. Second, you haven't established yourself financially yet, unless you're a trust fund baby. You have not done that yet. She doesn't need that. And third, you're gonna learn fucking lot. Okay. And those are three, but personally, I'm sold. and I'm 45 years old.
To your point, that you made right at the beginning when you're talking about Tylin as well, is it's also important to remember that Mat has been a player, especially after what happened to Melindra. With Melindra is okay, no more of that. I'm not getting tied down because that's how it ends, and I don't want anything to do with that. I'm gonna dance, I'm gonna have a little canoodle, and I'm gonna move on. But one, the pattern has other ideas for him, and two, you as a man, as a human being, you need that connection. You need that settling down. You need that partnership. And so, one of the things that being with Tylin does, even if it is very unconventional, is it kind of conditions him to settling down and pairing up.
Mm-hmm. Well, it helps them transition back to that idea at least.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
So
and
it's
sometimes you have that semi long term one that doesn't work out, and you remember all the good things about it, which he does fondly, and then you acknowledge that it didn't work out, and that's actually when you start looking for the long term one.
and you see that with when he finally leaves as he is relieved to be gone, but he does miss her. And then when they find out that she was killed and how she was killed, he's, I mean, he's right back to Melindra again. He's in that same frame of thought of, I did this. And not only did I do this, not only did I cause this human being's and a woman's death, but you see it was someone he genuinely cared for.
Well, and that's an important point you just brought up. I caused her death, which he didn't. It was the bad guy that caused the death. He did what seemed like a good idea at the time because of what the Shanshin were doing.
In order to protect her, he tied her up
Mm-hmm.
and shoved her under the bed to
Mm-hmm.
protect her
Mm-hmm.
because he knew there was going to be blowback from what he was about to
Which
do.
goes to my point about learning from the initial relationship. It's a metaphor of I did something wrong in the end, and now I'm a grown up from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can lament what happened with that relationship. I can admire what was good about that relationship, but now I'm going to be better for the next girl.
And he absolutely has to be better for the next girl because she's on a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Tylin was a queen, but as was frequently pointed out, she was really more of a baroness
Mm-hmm.
because her power really did not extend very far outside of Ibudar.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that was appealing about the Sanshin is, I mean, not only do I not have a choice here, but they're actually going to let me continue to rule, and I'm actually going to be the ruler of the whole of my country now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and Tuon, you see from the beginning, and the more you learn about her childhood and the way she grew up, and that she a couple of times, the reason her disappearance doesn't cause the tumult that Mat thinks it's going to is because she had to fake her death a few times during her childhood to avoid assassination attempts or to reveal plots against herself. And you're like, holy crap. And the more Mat learns about this, he's like, oh crap, this is the person I'm fated to marry. I'm
Yeah.
doomed.
Well, then it's actually like there was a stepping stone effect too there because Thailand had to deal with duels. Duels are at least mutually agreed to.
Yeah.
She had to deal with assassination attempts.
Hmm.
So that ups the danger level. And one thing he had to go through was he had to deal with family because Beslin was there.
Yeah.
There's a dynamic when you meet your girl's family because they're automatically going to have a what's the word? The best thing you could hear from a father is you better not break her heart because that's a good man, right? If you have a female with an adult son and he doesn't take that stance, she didn't raise him right, right? It's
So here's an interesting little tidbit from RJ from 2002. Um, So this is Knife of Dreams hadn't come out yet, but we've seen Tuon now. We have seen her in Winter's Heart and Crossroads. So we know who she is, and we have seen started to see her dynamic with Matt that would really unfold in Knife of Dreams, which is why I love that book so much. Um, and this is from RJ quote, when I write from someone's point of view, I try to really get inside that person's skin and they become my favorite character. But I must say I like Tuan even when I'm writing from other points of view. She's an intelligent, capable woman who has grown up in a competitive and highly deadly atmosphere. She and her siblings must compete to prove their worth. The winner will be the heir to the throne. She is short, slender, and wishes she had more bosom and height. So she thinks she has no presence and must make up for it by her skill. And part of that skill is how she tests Matt, which is also one of the interesting bits because that is part of her growth. So
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the reasons I like Knife of Dreams so much is because for me, it's so much like Shadow Rising with Perrin and Fail. It's not just Perrin, it's not just Fail, it's them together and the way they grow together. And it's also interesting because it's so different. Because generally speaking, uh, I don't remember if I brought this up or not, but this was one of the things that now you go when Candace was on trigonometry because she confirmed something I tease my wife about all the time is why are you testing me? And you know, she said, "Oh yeah, we test women test guys all the time." That can be a really bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you are testing them expecting to set them up for failure. That it's an element of emotional blackmail.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for Tawan, it is a necessary, as Jordan put it, skill because she has to know because remember she had signs and portents and a foretelling.
Mm-hmm.
So she didn't have as direct an answer as Matt did. When Matt heard Daughter of the Nine Moons, he said, "Oh, poopy."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, lost his mind and said what he said, which opened him up to getting married, unbeknownst to him. She has to test him because all right, if these signs and portents are correct, and this is the guy I am fated to marry, I need to make sure he can handle what's coming, which is, you know, the as Jordan said, the highly competitive and highly deadly atmosphere of the Sanchian court. And then Matt is able to do with her what he couldn't do with Tylin, either because a combination probably of the experience, which is one of the things he got from Thailand was the very practical experience,
Mm-hmm.
but also the negative example of not being able to be your own man. But when he's with Tuan, he's in charge. And even though she doesn't act like he's in charge, he can be his own man. And so he said that's when he says, all right, we're going to play a game. Fine. Let's play this game. And he starts to, I can't remember what professor I had that said, Sun Tzu's Art of War is the greatest relationship book ever written.
That's
I,
why he's Grant.
I don't remember if it was one of my philosophy professors or one of my military history professors, but I've never forgotten that. And then I actually read it and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And you see that when you see Matt's point of view and how he's attacking, quote unquote, Tawan, how he's countering her moves. And so it is a very different style, but it's still the same result of getting to know each other and growing together that happened with Perrin and Fael and Shadow Rising. It just happens in a very different way in Knife of Dreams.
Well, I appreciate that part of it, but at the same time, of every way I identify with Matt, this is not one of them. She was, yeah, this she was very manipulative, and she was very to me it felt like, because of all the signs and portents and fates and that exist in this universe, she was a means to get the Shanshin into the last battle, and Matt to be part of that as the ultimate general. And other than that, okay, there were some romantic moments, but at the same time, I thought Matt deserved more romance and
Mm.
less battle. Yeah, he's the son of battles. Yeah, but at the same time, he deserved the romance as well.
Well, I think that is, I don't want to turn this into a Sanderson bashing episode, but I think that
It
is
could have been more romantic.
that
Yeah.
is something you see in Knife of Dreams. I'm thinking most specifically about one of my favorite moments of when they first kiss, and Matt's like, "Awesome! I got to kiss the girl that I'm growing sweet on, that I have to be sweet on because I'm fated to marry her." And then he wants to go in for another one, and she's like, "No." And he brings up at a later point, you know, uh, it's when she completes the marriage ceremony, and he's like, "Look, I like you, and we're getting to know each other and whatnot, but I mean, what the heck?" And she's what do you mean? I did this for the Empire. But you also see from her point of views that she is growing in that in that emotional way. There is a growth of passion there that she wasn't expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a little bit of it when she's leaving, and I can't remember the name of him, the Death Watch general who came to get her is like, if I may, I was married a long time and I know a man in love when I see it.
Yeah, but then also you lose it completely when they finally are in the garden,
And that's
and
where I was getting to,
she's
and
like,
why.
"You're
Yeah,
going to give me a baby,"
yeah,
and
exactly.
and
Is this
to
is
me, I imagine that just this him lying on his back and her going, okay, done.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
When's it gonna be my turn?
yeah, and I'm just like, wow, okay. I don't know if it was something you wanted to keep PG, or you just don't know how to write it, Sanderson, but we could have used some smut novel there.
Or at the very least, the point where we started here, which is where the heck's the romance? Because it
Hmm.
was growing, and I think Sanderson flubbed it there for the giggles.
Well, and you could even, because remember, the Death Watch guard is watching the whole thing. You could have even had her say something to the extent of, actually, we want some privacy here. Make a perimeter nobody can watch. Something along those lines. Because then it would have like implied that she wants to like get very sexual with it, not just do a task.
And there was a moment where I think maybe Sanderson, this was his attempt at romance, is that after the fact, change scenes, come back, and they have fallen asleep, cuddled up together in the garden. I think them falling asleep cuddled up together was probably his attempt at showing there is some, it's not just give me an air, there is some romance there, but I feel like it was seriously flubbed because
Mm-hmm.
again, you see a growth there from Crossroads, and especially in Knife of Dreams, as Matt actually starts to court her, like seriously, with intention. I am going to court this woman and I'm going to win,
You
right?
know, you could even have like a very semi-practical but under the breath kind of moment there where instead of them just waking up together, that was better than I thought. Maybe we'll have multiple heirs. You know,
But you
that kind of thing.
yeah, but they get interrupted by the gray man, I think is what interrupts them there.
Hmm.
And so
No,
there
doesn't he kill
isn't
the gray
much of a
man
moment.
before they do it?
Oh, you're right. It
That's why
does.
that's why they she ends up jumping his bones there anyways.
That's right. That's right. No, it's when Rand shows up. That's what
Hmm.
interrupts them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
But
again,
you could have had 5 words before Rand shows up.
and we griped about that scene because yay, we finally after the middle of Lord of Chaos, when Rand shows up and sends Mat off on this mission to go get Elaine, and it's the last time they were together after spending, you know, two very important books uh together almost exclusively in Shadow Rising and Fires of Heaven. They're together, and it's important and it matters. And now they're off, and now they're finally back together. And much like my gripe about, yay, Perrin and Mat finally back together, and it's played for giggles,
Hmm.
and it doesn't work for whatever reason. Even when he could write the individual character, he seemed to have trouble putting certain characters together.
Hmm.
And I think Mat and Tuon, he actually wrote, and I remember saying this at the time, credit where it's due, as much as we griped about how he wrote Mat and had trouble finding Mat's voice and doing that character justice, he did a good job with the Tuon points of view that we get. I liked Sanderson's Tuon points of view, but when they're together, it's painful. It
Hmm.
doesn't work,
Yeah, and
no
you
matter
talk
whose
about
point of view it
yeah,
is.
you talk about tropes on their head, and I think what maybe Jordan was going for there, but definitely Sanderson was going for there with some of the conversations between Mat and Tuan was we have Mat as the canoodler, as you brought up,
Mm-hmm.
then Mat as the sub, which was a learning lesson for him, and then Mat using those skills to court Tuan and getting in a rigid relationship, and then finding out later he can be a canoodler while in that rigid relationship. And that's kind of, I think that was, I don't know whose design that was, but
Yeah. Well, and Mat, it's not just that he's a canoodler, he is a passionate individual. And so this is part of his effect on Tuban that Jordan, I think, was very purposely trying to write, which is that, honey, I'm a leader too. I may not be, you know, the heir to the empire, um, but I'm a general. I'm a leader. I know how this stuff works. I know that there's the personal you and the professional you, but you got to have some passion. You got to have some connection. You cannot live your life just as this robotic individual that she is as the daughter of the nine moons, and then even as the empress when she takes on that mantle. It's, you are way too robotic, and that's not healthy.
mm-hmm.
We need each other, and that includes, you know, by all accounts, for all of the uh you know, fuddy duddy, don't show any ankle, have the dress all the way up to your chin. uh Prince Albert and Queen Victoria had a lot of children
Mm.
because they really liked each other. So for all of the outside trappings of the austerity of the Victorian age, they apparently understood, when we're alone together, we need to be together. And there's that includes the physical as well as the cuddling afterwards. And
Well, lack of birth control helps there too, but
that helps a lot.
yeah.
But the birth control for a lot of people was, well, we just don't have sex
Hmm.
because we can't or don't want to risk it. Well, no, they kept going.
Yeah. Well, and as far as Matt's concerned, to kind of close it out, that openness and agreeableness is actually, I think, the best combination for that word you use, passion.
Mm.
Because not only are you open to explore, but you want to please. And if you have both of those together, that's going to be the greatest sex you've ever had because you're willing to do what it takes to make them happy, which is going to in turn make them want to make you happy. And
You just gave me a thought of, okay, so my closing thought of, so it's all about sex. Well, as we've said, for guys, it's not all about sex, but that
is it not the
physicality,
difference between what you call a relationship and what you call a friend?
that's exactly where I'm going here.
Yeah.
That physicality is to us how you show that you care, but there's a great scene for that passionate openness about Mat that isn't about sex, and it's when they're saying goodbye to Egwene. And he says in his head, by golly, I don't care how much we fight like siblings. that's still my sister, my friend, the person I grew up with, that I came from. Get off your damn horses, and we're going to kneel, because these Aes Sedai might treat Egwene like she's not really the Amarillion, but we're going to.
Well, there's a
That was a
lesson in
very
this. We
passionate moment from him.
Yeah, well, there's a lesson in this for you ladies out there that are looking for a passionate man. Uh, if what they do for a living, or if what they do, if you're talking to them at first date, let's say first date, and you mention an interest of theirs, and they just like get giddy and their eyes are open and everything, because if they're going to be passionate in the romantic way, they're going to be passionate about a lot of things, which is good in that you're going to get that romance you want. Now, if you're we talked about in previous episodes, if you're that, I want everything to be about me, you're going to lose that, because they're also going to be passionate about a lot of things, whether it's their work, or whether it's their favorite charity, or whether it's, their friendships, or anything. So if they're a passionate person, they're probably just passionate, and you're going to benefit from that. But you might have to give up some attention to other pursuits. They might be passionate about their Warhammer painting army, right?
That's the thing.
It is a thing. Yeah, I threw that in there on purpose.
Yep. All right. Well, hopefully we have enlightened somebody about something, because we're certainly passionate about this and we find it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why we said
He's
we
trying to
said
get laid with that statement.
well, uh, which is why we said, all right, we're done with the series, and we're gonna have an epilogue, and then we just keep going, because we keep going. Hey, you know what? This applies to this thing that we're talking about here. Let's use Watt as an example, and we'll probably be back at it when we can. We may have some time off here, because you're going to be traveling.
Yeah, I will be
Uh,
in Europe for 10 days. 10 days.
yeah.
So,
So we will see y'all when we see you, and who the heck knows what we're talking about, because I
well,
don't know.
we'll probably do a social episode first when we come back, but then we got the third part of the romance in Wheel of Time, because we still got Swan and Brian, and anybody else y'all leave in the comments, or anybody else
Yeah.
we can think of. Yep.
Yeah. Interesting dynamics that we can talk. Well, I mean, there's the
We got Egwene and Gawain. Oh, you said we beat that one to
we
death.
we beat that dead horse, but I kind of griped about it, but Pavara and what's his face? Um
Uh,
I'm just
Androl.
Androl. There's an interesting dynamic turned on its head,
We could do
because they
Lan
literally
and
read each
Nynaeve.
other's minds. Yeah. Lan and Nynaeve, and as I mentioned earlier, there's an interesting non-romantic relationship there beforehand with Lan and Moraine. So
Well, we also
there's
have Tom and Moraine. And we can
yep,
contrast Lan and Tom, and why one was a romance and why one was a deep friendship.
it's a good point. That
Yeah.
that 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 may be a good place to go next time, because there are some interesting contrasts there. And then with Brian and Sawan, you have the interesting contrast of, these are older people who have lived a full life,
Hmm.
and so their courtship is very different from the young characters, which I find very interesting as well. All right, well, we will see y'all then.
All right. Later.